You're listening to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast, episode 128. Welcome to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. I'm your host, Paula Price, lawyer turned certified executive coach. This podcast was created to empower women lawyers just like you to create a life and practice you love. Join me every week for a break from the hustle so we can focus on you, what you truly want, and how you can create it. If you're over the overwhelm, done with putting out fires, and ready to redefine success on your own terms, you're in the right place. Ready for today's episode? Let's dive in. How often do you find yourself struggling with a decision where you don't know what to do next? Maybe it's a decision that you're making at work. Maybe it's a particular problem that you're trying to solve. Maybe it's a bigger decision. Maybe it's career related or a big decision in your personal life. And what you might find in those moments is that the decision feels really heavy. You might feel that no matter what way you go, there are costs and benefits, and you don't know which costs and which benefits you should weigh more heavily. And because you struggle so much with that decision, because it keeps coming back, you look outside of yourself for the answer. You might look to mentors, you might look to experts, you might find yourself doing a lot of searching on the internet, scrolling late night, trying to find the answer, and yet it doesn't work. You don't reach the answer that you're looking for. If you can relate, you're absolutely not alone, because many of the clients that I work with, many of the lawyers who come to me because they are struggling with a decision. They know they want to move forward in a particular direction, and yet that decision feels really difficult for them to make. And I know for myself, I've had many decisions over the course of my professional life and outside of my professional life that felt really difficult to make. And what I'm going to share with you today is a tool, an exercise to help you tap into the wisdom that you already have by channeling your inner mentor when you have these difficult decisions ahead of you. As we dive into the episode, I would invite you to think about decisions that are weighing on you right now, and to imagine how you're going to deal with those decisions in light of what you're going to learn today. So with that, we're going to dive into the episode. I'm going to share with you how to channel your inner mentor. Now, this may be a concept that you're already familiar with, or this may be new to you. When I think about lawyers and how they do or do not channel their own inner wisdom, I think there are a number of reasons, 3 in particular, why you may not be doing this already. Number 1 is you may have become accustomed to having other people set the rules for you. This starts at a very young age when we have our parents who are telling us what to do, when we should eat, what we should wear, what time we should come home. And that extends to teachers at school, professors at university. We have all sorts of inputs from society in terms of what we should look like, how we should dress, the kind of jobs that we should have, the kind of mothers we should be, the kind of homes we should live in. We have no shortage of advertising, magazines, social media. There are all these external inputs that come to us that seem to have the answers, that seem to have the guidance, that are telling us how they think that we should live our lives. And what can happen is that we can look at those people and assume that they know something that we don't know, that they somehow know better. And what can happen then is that you feel as though the answers are out there. Right? It's like doing legal research. When you've been given an issue to look into, you turn to the cases, you turn to the statutes, you're out in the world trying to find the answer. You know that if you can just find the case, the answer will be there. And sometimes we take that same approach to our lives, the decisions that impact us. We think there must be a right answer. And if we keep on looking, if you keep searching long enough, if you talk to the right mentors, if you talk to the right experts, you will somehow find the answer. And as a result, it may not occur to you that the answer that you're looking for is actually an answer that you already possess. So that's one reason. Another reason why you may not be channeling your inner mentor is that you have a very strong inner critic, and that critic has been running the show. I did a podcast episode a few weeks ago about inner critics, and if this resonates with you, I'd invite you to go back and listen to that episode. I don't think our inner critics are ill-intentioned, but they are sometimes misguided, and there are tools that you can use to better manage that critic. And turning to today's topic and your inner mentor, one of the reasons that you may not be tapping into her is because the voice of the critic is so strong. Your inner critic is chattering in your ear. She's sending you these messages, these warnings, these criticisms, and her voice is so loud, you're not able to tune into the quieter whispers that your inner mentor may be trying to share with you. The third reason why you may not be channeling your inner mentor is that maybe the concept seems woo. And I get it. I used to practice law. I have gone through law school, legal training, all of it. And my experience of legal practice was very much a focus on the math, the logic, the facts, the law, and things like opinion. Well, unless you were a qualified expert, your opinion wasn't really relevant, and your emotions weren't necessarily the driving force behind the decisions. You could be really upset about something, but you needed to look at the letters, the black letter law, to come to the resolution of it. And so if you're used to separating yourself from your own opinions, if you're used to separating yourself from your own feelings in your professional work, you may find that that has a spillover effect into other aspects of your life. And so when it comes to tapping into your intuition, when it comes to decisions that really require you to tap into how you feel, what's in your heart versus what's in your head, that might be something that feels so foreign to you. You may have lost practice in doing that. What that can translate to and how you may be trying to resolve the big decisions in your life is when you feel stuck, when you have a problem that you can't solve on your own, when you feel like an imposter, you may be using some go-to strategies that aren't necessarily getting the results that you're looking for. So for example, if you turn to others and you're looking to mentors or experts for their wisdom and guidance, you might follow their advice, but what you might find is that it doesn't work for you. And then you start to blame yourself. You think there's something wrong with you because somebody else's strategy didn't work for you. You might turn to your inner critic. You might rely on her to get you motivated, to give you the answers. And when you let your inner critic try to run the show and find that she is going to make the plan and run the show, that doesn't work either. You might find that you end up exhausted because of the way that she speaks to you, because of the energy that you're expending trying to avoid that criticism. And another strategy that you might employ is if you're focused on the math and you're focused on the logic, you might find that you are planning things out meticulously based on the logic of what you think you should do and what you think success should look like, and override your feelings and your intuition. And the reason that this doesn't work is that there's a limit to how much, number one, other people's opinions and expertise can benefit you. Others, when you rely on them, might inadvertently point you in the wrong direction. So what they might see as a great goal for you, what they might see as a great future for you, might be something that doesn't resonate with you at all. And so if you rely on them to guide you, you might end up being guided to the wrong place, not through anybody's ill will, but simply through misdirection. Again, they might suggest strategies that worked really well for them, but they don't work for you. And what you might also find is that if you're relying on your inner critic, that the techniques or the strategies that got you here, if relying on your critic was a way that you managed to reach the level of success that you have currently, you might be really reluctant to let that go. But the strategies that got you here may not be the same strategies that will get you there. And what you might find with your inner critic is that, yes, she sets up plans for you. Yes, she might motivate you with her loud voice and the opinions that she offers. But you might find that her plans are extreme. You might find that she's got that all or nothing thinking where she sets you up with really high expectations. She wants you to do everything all at once right now. And it may be that what she's offering you is not sustainable in the long run. So she's concerned with your short-term success, but she doesn't see the big picture. And finally, if you're relying on logic, if you're looking at the external check marks, the boxes that you need to check, and you're not tapping into your intuition, you're not asking yourself how you feel, what you might find is that you reach a result that looks really good on paper. Other people might look to you and they'll say, wow, she's a partner at her firm. She argues all the big cases. She's so successful. She has this great title. She's always so put together. She even does this with her kids and all this. I mean, they might be looking at you and thinking that you have the best life ever. And yet on the inside, you might be feeling miserable because the things that you've achieved, the things that you've accomplished do not align with what truly makes you happy. So what you can create is you might spend so much of your time listening to others, following their advice, chasing their dreams, that you lose sight of your own. And you may end up devoting a large amount of your resources, your time, your energy, your money to goals that don't really speak to you. And you may not develop the skill of relying on yourself, of learning to listen to yourself and follow your own instincts, and to build that relationship with yourself. The more you listen to your critic, if that's what's motivating you, the more exhausted you may feel. You may feel exhausted by the constant criticism and your efforts to avoid that criticism. And you may also feel exhausted by the strategies that you're using when you listen to the critic. The harsh, relentless pace is unsustainable. And you might find as a result, you live in a state of reaction instead of a state of creation. And reaction versus creation, these are the exact same letters set up in a different order and have such a different meaning and a completely different outcome. And if you feel like you're living in a reaction mode, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like you wake up and your day happens to you, versus a creation mode where you wake up and you create the day that you want. There is a vast difference in terms of how you feel, the steps and actions that you take, and how you create results in your practice and outside of your practice. Finally, if you're focusing only on the math and the logic, you might find that you're missing out on the parts of you that make you human and that bring you joy. And you may find that the more you try to focus on the math, focus on what looks good, focus on what you feel like you should do, the more disconnected you become from yourself and your dreams. And you may reach a point where you don't even know what it is that you want anymore. So today's podcast episode is about tapping into your inner mentor, because tapping into your mentor will help you with all of these things. It will help you make decisions that are more aligned. It will help you feel more in that creative mode. It will help you gain a level of control and vision for your future. And it will also help you figure out how it is that you're going to get there. I'm going to offer you 4 steps to channel your inner wisdom, to channel the wisdom of your inner mentor. And we're going to start with step number 1, which is to start with your own vision of success. Before we can access the wisdom that you have within, we need to figure out what it is that you're asking for that wisdom for. And when you think about accessing your wisdom, I would invite you to think about what success looks like for you. You can play this game with all sorts of different types of success. You might be thinking about long-term success. Your mentor that you might be channeling might be 10 years from now. You might see yourself, maybe you've got young kids right now, your kids are older, you're more established in your practice, you have a bigger home, you live in a different part of the city. I mean, there might be all sorts of things that you see for yourself 10 years from now. And so if that's the nature of the exercise, you're going to be looking at mentorship from that perspective. You may also have a shorter timeline that you can look to when it comes to channeling your inner mentor. It may be there's a very specific problem that you're having at work. It might be a conversation that you're pushing off with somebody, whether it's a client or a colleague or a boss, somebody that you work with rather closely that feels like a really difficult conversation to have. And there might be something that's holding you back, and you want to be able to channel your wisdom in order to know how you can approach that situation. It might be that you're struggling with a decision that you're making right now. So often lawyers will come to me with decisions about career transitions. And so that might be on your mind. You might be looking at 2 different paths, a fork in the road. Do you want to go in this direction or in that direction? Often these decisions will come up in relation to your job and your family. So if you've got young kids at home, or even not so young kids at home, you might find that there's a significant impact on your professional life. Your family and your professional life are now competing for your time and attention and focus. And so you might be recalibrating how you approach your career in order to accommodate the wishes that you have for your role within your family. And so whatever it is that you're looking at, I would invite you to think about what success is going to look like for you. And that will be, of course, unique to you. And if you want some ideas on how to define success, I recorded a podcast episode way back at the beginning about how to be wildly successful. And there are prompts in that podcast episode that will help you figure out what success means to you. So let's imagine what that success looks like. It is going to be that best case scenario of the ultimate success that you could create. It may be that you're in a role that you absolutely love. You're a leader at your firm or organization. You love what you do every day. You might imagine what your perfect day looks like, what your perfect week looks like when you've achieved that level of success. Your version of success might be confidence. That might be something that you're struggling with, where you feel a lot of self-doubt, imposter syndrome. And so your version of success is you feeling confident. You might, in that state, be able to set better boundaries. You might find that your approach to your practice, your approach to how you spend your time feels peaceful and productive relative to what's going on right now. You might find that in that state, you would focus only on projects that really matter to you. And when you turn things down, you feel confident and elegant when you say no. You might find that your level of success has to do with balance. Maybe right now you're feeling really off balance, that your health is suffering, that you're not spending enough time with your family and loved ones. You're not spending enough time looking after yourself. And so your version of success might be a practice where that is in place, where you feel healthy, you feel like you're taking care of yourself, and that spills over into your professional work. So you might imagine what that looks like. And finally, your vision of success might be what I alluded to earlier. You might be looking at a longer term perspective. I know I have done this many times before, mapping out my professional work and aligning that with the trajectory that I expect my family to take. So my kids are 11 and 9 now, and I can tell you that over the past 11 years, managing my professional work has looked a lot different than how it looked before I had children. And so for me, that means mapping out the levels of professional involvement to complement what I want to do at home. And this can be a really tricky balance to navigate. Whether you're balancing kids or something else with your professional work, there's always going to be this tension where you're choosing one over the other. And so finding a way to imagine how you want that to look. If it's kids, for example, I know my kids are going to grow up and become more independent, and they're going to want less of me, less of my time. And so my goal is to create my professional work that expands to fill that space as it becomes available. And I have an idea of what that looks like for me. And for you, if you can relate, I would imagine or invite you to imagine what that would look like for you, what it looks like for you as your family evolves, or whatever it is that you might be thinking about. How do you want your career progression to look? You might have the opposite. You might be at a stage where your practice feels really busy right now, where you are 100% focused on that. And upcoming is that you're going to have a family. You might be at an earlier stage. And so you might be wanting to reduce your professional commitments for a period in order to focus more on family. You might be nearing retirement, for example, and you might be deciding about what it looks like when you start to wind down. So whatever stage you're at, I would invite you to play with timelines and to imagine different timelines and what you want that to look like for you, what you want your professional work to look like, your relationships to look like, your health to look like, your life to look like. Do you travel? Do you not travel? Do you garden? Do you play sports? The idea here is simply to create that vision in your mind of what success looks like, because that is going to set you up for the next step, which is to imagine yourself there. Once you have imagined that vision of success and the timeline that the success is going to take place on, the second part is to get a vision of yourself. This is when you get to decide or imagine who you are with that level of success. What do you look like? I mean, if you are traveling 10 years into the future, 20 years into the future, chances are you look a little bit different. So how do you look? Do you look healthy? Do you look fit? Do you look relaxed? Do you look busy? What exactly do you look like? Where are you? When you have this vision in your mind of you as the successful version of yourself at some point in the future, where are you? Are you in your office? Are you on a beach practicing yoga? Are you at home with your family? Where are you? What are you wearing? Are you wearing a suit? Are you wearing something more relaxed? Are you wearing business casual, a dress? Are you at a fancy affair? So you get to decide what you look like in this vision process. How do you hold yourself? What does your posture, your body language say about you and your level of confidence, your level of ease, your level of grace? Now, when you look to the future, what is different about you? Now, if you're older, then yes, you will probably look a little bit older, but what else? What else is different about you in that vision that you have of you in this moment where you feel successful? What is different about you on the other side? So if you have, for example, a particular obstacle that you're thinking about or a decision that you're trying to make, that version of you is on the other side of that decision or that obstacle. What is different about her? What is the same? When you look at that vision of you, what do you carry with you after you've reached that level of success? What continues to be the same for you? Maybe it's your curiosity. Maybe it's your commitment. Maybe it's your persistence. Maybe it's your creativity. And then finally, what about the other people in your life? If you think about your partner, if you think about your colleagues, if you think about your children, if you have children, if you think about your friends, maybe these are people that you haven't even met yet, but who else is in that vision with you? So that was step 2. Step 1 was defining success for yourself. What does the vision of success look like? Number 2 is to get a very crystal clear vision about who you are, the vision of you who has attained that level of success. And then the third part, this is where we really get to access the wisdom that you hold already within you, and that is to ask her questions. And I've got 10 questions that you can ask, and I would invite you to follow along. If you want, you can write these questions down. These are not the only questions that you can ask her, but here are some questions I would invite you to consider. Number 1 is, what do you believe has helped you create your success? So when you're having that conversation with your inner mentor, what do you believe has helped you create your success? So how does your inner mentor think about the world that may be different from how you think right now? Does she see success as something that is attainable? I mean, she must have in order for her to have reached it. What else does she think? Does she think that your commitment is what matters most? Does she think you can do this no matter what? So you want to get into her mind and ask yourself what it is that she believed, what it is that she thinks, what opinions she has. What is it that founded her belief in her ability to reach the level of success that she has? Now, the second question that I'd invite you to ask her is, how do you feel now that you have arrived? How do you feel? So in that vision, how does that version of you feel? Does she feel confident? Does she feel established? Does she feel rich with the knowledge that she can create whatever she sets her mind to? And you might also ask her what feelings she needed to experience on her way there. So she may have felt a lot of discomfort when she needed to do things for the first time. She may have felt uncertainty at moments when she didn't know for sure if she would end up where she ultimately did end up. She may have felt frustrated with the pace maybe, or certain things that happened along the way. She may also have felt really committed. She may have felt motivated. She may have felt confident. So ask yourself, ask that version of yourself who is at some point in the future having achieved the goal that you have set for yourself, that definition of success, how it is that she feels now and what feelings she had along the way in order to get there. Now, the third question that you can ask her is, what steps did she take to get there? This is a really powerful question, because it invites you to tap into knowledge that you already have within you. And you may be overlooking the fact that you have these answers already. So for example, if she transitioned into a completely different role, what was it that she did? What conversations did she have? What steps did she take? Who did she speak with? What kind of questions was she asking? What was she willing to do that maybe you're not doing right now? If she, for example, created her own firm, what steps were required to do that? What research did she need to do? What decisions did she need to make? Which banks did she need to go to get loans? I mean, what is it exactly that you think she did in order to reach that level of success? So depending on what success looks like, of course, you're going to have different action steps, but I would invite you to channel your inner wisdom, what you know already, to create a map, action steps that you can take to get to the success that you are looking for. Number 4, what do you know now that you did not know at my stage? Again, this is a really fun question. If you look at that version of you and then you ask her, what does she know that you don't know? You might come up with some really interesting answers, right? She's been there. She's done that. What is she trying to tell you? Question number 5, what am I not seeing? Again, this is a really powerful question. What is it that you're not seeing in your day-to-day that she sees? On the other side of success, she's made the decisions. She's overcome the obstacles. What is it that you're not seeing? And sometimes what you're not seeing is what you already have in front of you. Sometimes what you are not seeing is how close you already are. Sometimes what you're not seeing is that you've made the decision. I know I see this with clients who come to me where they want to make a decision and they've made that decision already, and speaking with me is almost like that final step. It solidifies for them. It helps them see what they already know. And so maybe this is somewhat like the conversation that you're having with your inner mentor. Maybe there's something there that you're not seeing, and yet it's right in front of you. And there's an analogy that I'd invite you to think about, which might be helpful here. And sometimes when you speak with somebody else, whether it is a mentor, whether it's a friend, whether it's a coach, is that they can offer you the benefit of perspective that you don't have yourself. And channeling your inner mentor can potentially help you gain that perspective. So if you imagine you're in a river, let's say you go river rafting and you're going down the river and you fall out of your boat and, you end up kind of clinging to the shrubs and the rocks and you manage to, pull yourself out of the river and onto the shore. And you think, oh gosh, that was such a disaster. And maybe what you didn't see, which if I was watching you, if I was standing on the shore of the river and I was watching you struggle and I was watching you fall out of the boat and I was watching you climb your way to the riverbed, I might see that and think, oh my gosh, that's the best thing that could have happened to you. And you might be thinking that it's the worst thing that could have happened to you. And the reason why I think it's the best thing that could have happened to you is because I know that on that river, there comes a point where there's a drop. And then if you had stayed in a boat, you would have ended up going down that drop and getting injured. And so you may not see it from the place where you are now, but somebody else with more perspective can see it. And so if you're able to tap into that version of you, to tap into the version of you that's already accomplished the goal, you may see how obstacles are actually helping you, how things that don't really seem to make sense in the moment actually are helpful. So what that version of you is seeing that you don't currently see, it can be a really powerful question. Another note here is when it comes to your inner critic, often your inner critic is giving you instructions with a really short-term perspective. If you think about your fight or flight response when you're really nervous or agitated or acting in a very reactive way, often you're in survival mode. You're in fight, flight, freeze, and you're just trying to get by in the moment. You don't necessarily see the big picture. But when you tap into longer term thinking, when you're thinking about it from a more relaxed state, which is what we're doing here, we're really imagining ourselves at a point in the future, things look good, you've accomplished what you want, you're able to tap into a different level of creativity that's just not available to you when you're acting in reaction to your inner critic. So here, that question, what are you not seeing, can be a really powerful one. Question number 6, what do I need to start doing? So you can ask your inner mentor, and I bet she has some ideas about what you need to start doing that you are not currently doing. Similarly, what do you need to stop doing? And maybe it's you need to stop holding yourself back. You need to stop being so critical of yourself. You need to stop limiting yourself in terms of what you think your options are. So these are some things you might need to stop doing. Your inner mentor will give you lots of guidance. I kind of glossed over what you need to start doing. Well, okay, maybe we'll think of some examples there. Maybe you need to start listening to yourself more. Maybe you need to start investigating what your options are. Maybe you need to start taking action even if you don't feel 100% ready yet. Maybe you need to start trusting your instincts more. I mean, there are all sorts of things that may be different in that version of you that has reached the goal that you set for yourself. Question number 8. What did you do to keep going when you had setbacks? No matter what goal you pick for yourself, it is not going to be a clear, smooth ride without any obstacles. That's just not how things tend to work. I mean, if it does work out that way, great. But let's imagine that there are going to be some obstacles and some setbacks. What is it that you're going to want to channel? What does your future self, what does your inner mentor, what did she do? How did she manage when those obstacles showed up? And how can you use those on the path that you're going to take? Question number 9, from where you are now, how do you define success? And what you might find is when you look to the future and you define success from that perspective, I mean, we've already defined success. That was step 1 from where you are today. Imagine yourself, maybe it's 10 years in the future. How does she define success? How do you define success at that point? And what I would offer to you is that success at that stage may be more about the person that you have become rather than the milestones that you have achieved. So I'll just leave that with you. And finally, question number 10, what is one thing you want me to know? I love this question. I was a participant in a guided meditation a few years ago, and I met my future self in that meditation. And that was one of the questions, or some version of that question. And what I learned about myself, my future self, was that she said, it's going to be hard at times, and it's supposed to be that way. It was very clear to me. That was the thing that she told me. And so ask yourself that question. What is one thing you want me to know? And you may be really inspired and moved by the response that you get. So I'm going to recap everything that we've covered so far. Don't worry, not word for word, because that would take a very long time. But I'm going to recap the 3 steps and the questions for that last part. So number 1 is to start with your own vision of success. So you decide what success looks like. It can be a short-term success. It can be a longer-term success, but you want to define that goal for yourself. Number 2 is to imagine yourself there. So that's where you want to create a really crystal clear vision of you in that success, what you look like, who you are, where you are, who you surround yourself with, because that's the version of you that we're going to have a conversation with. Number 3 is ask her questions. And the questions that I offered were, number 1, what do you believe has helped you create success? What have you believed? What do you think helped you create your success? Number 2, how do you feel now that you've arrived, and what feelings did you need to experience along the way? Number 3, what steps did you take to get there? Number 4, what do you know now that I don't know at my stage? And that's where we got into that discussion about perspective and what people on the outside looking in might see that you don't currently see. Number 5, what am I not seeing? Again, going back to that perspective question. Number 6, what do I need to start doing? Number 7, what do I need to stop doing? Number 8, what did you do to keep going when you had setbacks? Number 9, from where you are now, how do you define success? And number 10, what's one thing you want me to know? So those are the 3 steps. The 4th step is simply to write it down. So whether you can pause the recording of this podcast or make some journal notes sometime later today, I would invite you to write down everything that you learn from your inner mentor, because that will help to anchor that information. You can then go back to it. You will record the benefit of your own wisdom. Now, the reason that this works, the reason why channeling your own wisdom through your inner mentor, your future self, however you want to describe it, is you will then create a success blueprint that is uniquely yours, that taps into your wants, your dreams, and your desires, not those of somebody else. The same is true of the strategies and the steps that you will take to get there. You're starting with what you know works for you. Number 2 is that you're going to counterbalance your inner critic. So if you have a really loud inner critic, an exercise like this where you quiet and you focus on your inner mentor, what you already know to be true, it allows you to hear her voice. You get to experience the benefit. Yes, your inner critic has a role. She is there to protect you. She's going to offer you some nuggets every now and again that you'll be glad that she offered you. But you also want to channel your inner mentor, that version of you that has the wisdom, that has achieved the results. Her voice might be quieter, and yet it is so powerful. Number 3 is because you've gone beyond the math. Okay, the exercise itself might feel a little bit woo. It might feel a little bit like you're in your imaginary land. Paula, why are you taking me through this? But it helps you move yourself away from what you think you should want and what you should do. And it allows you to tap into what your dreams are and create actions that align with those dreams. And what you'll find then is that when you are aligned, you are energized in a way that is different from how you'll feel if it's somebody else's idea, somebody else's wisdom that you're trying to follow. This is yours, uniquely yours. It is your dream, your path, your wisdom, and it will feel different to you. There are a few skills that are required. Number 1, of course, is to use your imagination. This whole exercise has been you exercising your imagination, coming up with your own ideas about what you want and how you're going to get there. So you will absolutely need to tap into that. Number 2 is you'll need to develop your self-trust. If you are going to listen to yourself, you're going to need to trust yourself. And that is a skill that you will develop increasingly as you do this type of exercise. And that leads to step 3, which is to practice. You can do this exercise once and receive the benefit of it. And I would invite you to do this practice regularly, to make it a practice, to make it something that you come back to. Because the more you tap into your own wisdom and the more you act in accordance with that wisdom, the greater trust you're going to have for yourself. So if we go back to the beginning where you're looking to others to answer questions for you, what if you can develop that trust muscle so that you can do that for yourself? So what you'll create as a result when you're able to tap into your inner mentor is number 1 is you will go from someone who needs others to give her permission, to offer her guidance, to basically provide the instruction manual in order to reach success, which may be defined from somebody outside of you, whether it's the media, society, a mentor, a parent, a teacher, whoever. You'll go from that to someone who trusts herself to make good decisions about her future. You will learn to enjoy the process of growth so much more. If you've been driving yourself through your inner critic and listening to her and trying to please her and trying to avoid mistakes and then beating yourself up, driving yourself forward through criticism and fear and unsustainable actions, shifting your strategy to your inner mentor, your inner wisdom, following strategies that are long-term strategies, ones that don't require you to hustle yourself into the ground and be miserable and go through burnout cycles and all of that. If you find a more sustainable way to reach your success, you're looking at it over the longer term, and the voice inside your head is one of kindness and support and motivation instead of that constant criticism, you may find that the process itself is less exhausting and much more enjoyable and sustainable. You might also find that if you have been doing the math and trying to follow the math and wondering why the math doesn't work, when you tap into your inner sense of wisdom, your inner knowing, instead of working hard and trying to get to the milestones and then wondering as you reach the milestones why it is that you're not happy, what you'll find is that you feel more relaxed and peaceful when things are hard, because you know that you're on the right path and you know that it's part of the process. Again, going back to your conversation with your inner mentor, obstacles are part of the way, right? That is expected in any journey where you're going to reach for something that is exceptional, which I know you are. And so that is just part of the process. And even if the math doesn't add up right now, you have faith that somehow it will all fit together in the longer term. So you may fall out of the raft and find yourself swimming to the shore and sitting there shivering on the riverbed thinking, God, this was the worst thing I ever did. And yet knowing that there was a reason for that, you avoided something else, or maybe this set you up on a different path where you're destined for something even better. So finally, you will develop a relationship with yourself that you can come back to anytime, anywhere. You don't need to wait for someone else to tell you the answer, to give you permission, or to cheer you on. You have that within yourself whenever you need it. So, my dear friend, thank you for listening, for tuning in today, for going through this exercise with me. I hope you have had a really, truly wonderful experience getting to know yourself better through today's episode. And I would invite you to write down when you sign off from today's podcast episode, to make a few notes about what you learned about yourself, what you know to be true, some of the advice that your inner mentor gave to you that you can then act on. And if you want any help going forward, if you want my support to help you go after your big goals, your big dreams, if you want my support in the context of a group coaching and mastermind program, I am here to support you. I'm here to help you channel everything that is already within you and to create what is going to be beautiful and exciting and fulfilling to you. So please do feel free to reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can send me an email. And if you are a fan of the podcast, if you've been listening and you want to support me in helping this podcast reach more lawyers like you who would benefit, please do write a review on wherever it is that you download your podcast. It really does help with the algorithms. It helps other people find the podcast. And I would love your feedback. So with that, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to wish you a beautiful week. And thank you again for joining me here today and for going through this exercise. I hope you had a chance to meet your inner mentor and learn something about yourself today that maybe you didn't already know. So thanks again, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, subscribe and follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you haven't already, please leave a rating and review. Your feedback will help me create a podcast that's tailored to your needs and goes straight to the heart of what matters to you. For instructions on how to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com/podcast launch. See you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. If you want more information, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com. See you next week.